Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Okay, so today we are going to continue with the reading on Venerable Mahākaccāna. So last reading we discussed about the Madhupindika Sutta, or the honey ball discourse, where Venerable Mahākaccāna explained in further detail the meaning of what the Buddha had mentioned in brief, very briefly, what the Buddha said in terms of the perceptions, feelings, mental proliferation, how one leads to the other. Okay, so that was the Madhupindika Sutta. So let us continue with the other two Majjhima Nikaya suttas. So here, the other two Majjhima Nikaya suttas featuring Mahākaccāna and one in the Anguttara Nikaya conform to this same stereotype pattern. The Buddha makes a brief statement, gets up, and enters his dwelling. The monks approach the elder to ask for an explanation of the meaning. He reprimands them for coming to him rather than asking the Lord himself. But finally, he complies with their requests and elucidates the Buddha's utterance. And the monks return to the Buddha and repeat his analysis, which the master applauds with words of praise. The Mahākaccāna Bhaddekarata Sutta, Majjhima Nikaya 133, centers around the famous Bhaddekarata poem, a set of verses spoken by the Buddha that had been circulating within the Sangha. The poem stresses the need to abandon longing for the past in anticipation of the future, calling instead for urgent effort to marshal all one's energies for penetrating with insight the present reality itself. Many of the Buddha's disciples had learned the poem by heart, along with the Buddha's own exegesis of it, and had been using it as an inspiration for their meditation practice and as a theme for sermons. So the Bhaddekarata Sutta, there are, I think, off the top of my head, was that 3 different versions? Let's see. 133. So you have 133. That's the Mahākaccāna Bhaddekarata. But also 131 first, which is a single night, which is the poem itself, Bhaddekarata Sutta. Then 132, which is featuring Ananda. So it's the Ananda Bhaddekarata Sutta. And then there's also 134. So there's the Lomasakkhāngiya Bhaddekarata Sutta, 134. So these are centered around the same poem of the single excellent night, Bhaddekarata, single lesson, a single excellent night. And there's 134 Lomasakkhāngiya. So also same poem, but this time featured another venerable by the name of Mahākaccāna. Okay, I'm just quickly looking up, because this word exegesis has been used a couple of times in this chapter. Exegesis or exegetical. So it's a biblical terminology. It's a exegesis is a noun, which means it's a critical explanation or interpretation of a text, especially of a scripture. So a critical explanation of a scripture is what it's saying, exegesis. So then exegetical, I'm assuming, is the adjective or adverb. Let me see. Again, same thing, relates to exegesis, or refers to the critical explanation or analysis of a text, particularly a scripture, to draw out its original intended meaning. So same thing, means to draw out the to a critical explanation or analysis of a particular text or a particular scripture is what exegesis means. Okay. So one bhikkhu named Samidhi, however, did not know even the poem, let alone its exegesis, its critical explanation. So one day, a benevolent deity, benevolent, generous, I think, benevolent, let me quickly have a look. Benevolent, charitable, generous, benevolent. Kind, oh, sorry, not generous. Kind and with positive intentions. Kind and with positive intentions. So this deity, taking compassion on him, came to him in the early morning and urged him to learn the Padekaratta poem and exposition. So Samidhi went to the Buddha and asked him to teach these to him. And the Buddha recited the poem. Let not a person revive the past or on the future build his hopes, for the past has been left behind and the future has not been reached. Instead, with insight, let him see each presently arisen state. Let him know that and be sure of it, invincibly, unshakably. Today the effort must be made. Tomorrow death may come. Who knows? No bargain with mortality can keep him and his hordes away. But one who dwells thus ardently, relentless by day, by night, it is he, the peaceful sage has said, who has had one excellent night. So Padekaratta Sutta, or a single excellent night, is the 4 suttas based around this poem. Okay, so the first verse, let not one revive the past or on the future build high hopes, for the past has been left behind and the future has not been reached. So many times, those of us who remember when Venerable Sister came, I used to give a talk and she used to draw pictures and she used to say, if we start every day holding on to the past, then we are like carrying a bag of rocks on ourselves every single day. So it's very heavy. And by holding on to that heaviness, it's very hard to be fully in the present and fully appreciate the present because of the baggage. So a lot of times nowadays people say, let go of baggage, let go of the baggage. That person has a lot of baggage. They cannot. So this is kind of another way of saying that a person is holding on to a lot of whatever in the past. It could be trauma, it could be bad experiences, it could be regret, it could be things that they cannot forgive. And, Bhante Dhammagavesi and a couple of others, even Milinji, who came a couple of weeks ago to talk, mentioned about how the forgiveness practice is so powerful to help us overcome. And it's a tool, really. It's a tool to help us overcome past baggage, past trauma, and it's a very powerful tool. It's a very powerful tool. And so that's really what it's trying to say. Because it's when certain things, if if life was just a little bit simpler, I mean, for some people actually it is. But when there are some traumas or bad experiences or even just in general, the inability to forgive and all that really becomes a big hindrance towards leading a fruitful life, let alone progress in the practice. So Bhante Vimalaramsi mentioned a lot how meditation is life, life is meditation. But really what that is the practice is very much into the daily life. It is really, it can't be separate. If it is separate, then we aren't really practicing fully. We aren't really embracing the whole of the practice in our lives. So that's really what it is. So when we are bogged down with the past too much and not being able to let go of the past, that will also hinder our progress in the practice. So it's not separate. So, even Milinji was saying his own experience during the retreat, right? Personal experience during the retreat. First day, second day, I think he said was third day, I can't remember exactly. Block. Can't feel anything in the heart. Can't go any further. And the instructions were to do more forgiveness meditation. How long that takes? Don't know. It depends. It's a person-to-person individual thing. But you just have to keep doing it, keep being very patient with oneself, and just have a lot of faith that it will help. And one day, things will clear. So that's really what it is. It's not just about not thinking about the past. It's really about letting go. Really about letting go. Having said that, it's not saying that, oh, I'm going to forget everything. No, it's letting go of what is keeping us down, those baggages, but at the same time also appreciating, okay, I had those experiences. What have I learned out of it? Is there anything I can learn out of it so that I don't repeat the same mistakes? I don't, cause pain to myself and to others again. So that's what lessons are for as well, to make sure that we remember and try not to repeat it again and again. Or on the future, build his hopes. So here again, there's a lot of misconception. I know because I was also under that misconception for many years. When we say, or on the future, build his hopes, we're not saying, okay, so I'm not going to plan anything about my future either. That's like, again, you see, the Buddha's teaching is all about self-responsibility, all about living a fruitful, happy, efficient, and effective life. So if think about it, if the Buddha's whole teaching was centered around the basis of ending suffering, not only for oneself but others, then how can it be that it's without being responsible for oneself? It doesn't make sense. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't align, see? So when we use our knowledge and our wisdom to think a little bit and not be, what's the word? Herd mentality, driven by herd. Nowadays, it's getting even worse, I feel. I'm not sure whether it's thanks to social media. I mean, social media is not a bad thing. Social media is just a tool. But how we use it depends on whether we benefit ourselves and others or not. But that's, it's like we plan, we have like a plan, right? We go, okay, this is what I plan to do with my life. How can I lead my life so that I can, follow the teachings, practice the Noble Eightfold Path as much as I can, practice loving kindness and compassion as much as I can, benefit myself, benefit others as much as I can. So when we have that kind of mindset, obviously we need to have some kind of planning as well. We need to have some kind of responsibility as well. We may not always fully achieve that, but we need to put in some effort to plan. So we can't just say, not build high hopes, so I'm not going to have any ambition. Or, you know what? There's no point in doing anything. So it's almost like the annihilation way of thinking, the other end. And the Buddha's teaching is always about the middle path, having a foundation, on the dana, sila, bhavana way of life, having a foundation on the Noble Eightfold Path, and then using that foundation to lead our life is what it's really trying to say. So I can't help but notice the misconception is still very, very strong. And having been caught in that misconception for many, many years myself, I realized that it actually goes, if we're not careful, okay, because there's a fine line. If we're not careful and get pulled away, it starts to break a lot of relationships. Then how can we say it's relevant to the Noble Eightfold Path, which is what the Buddha teaches? Because the Noble Eightfold Path is a harmonious way of living, harmonious lifestyle, harmonious perception, harmonious communication with ourselves, with others. So yeah, I mean, again, comes back to the Kalama Sutta. Everything that we learn, even in the teachings of the Buddha, we have to use our wisdom, we have to analyze, we have to meditate, practice, ask questions, if in doubt, so that we don't end up caught in a so-called herd mentality because so and so who has X number of followers is doing this, and everyone who's following them is doing this. Then we have a whole bunch of people who are not very mindful, not very harmonious at all. And I see this again and again. I myself still get caught into this sometimes and have to, mindful enough to catch myself. Oh, there we go again. Oh, forgive myself. Okay, let it go. Never mind. Never mind. 6 hours, come back, move on. But that's where we need the Kalyana Mitta to catch us and not fall into the so-called tides of the popular mass. Let's put it that way. Okay. So what it's trying to say is we don't go holding on to what's not yet gonna be in terms of the future. We set out a plan because we need to plan, because we know that we're going to have old age, sickness, and death. That is undeniable. So we plan our lives so that we have a harmonious life as much as we can with our family, with the people we work with, and also in that planning take into account that we will go through old age, sickness, and death, right? Because it would be weird that despite the Buddha teaching us all this already, we don't plan factoring that into account. As we don't think that we're going to die. We don't think that we're going to get sick. We don't think that we're going to go, oh, or to make it sound more logical, there are a lot of people who fear death. And because of that fear of death, a lot of decisions that they make every day is grounded or can be sourced back to that fear of death. This is true. So there's a saying, I can't remember who I heard it from, whether it was from one of the talks or something, but there is a saying, when we know how to die, then we will know how to live. So what it's trying to say is, when we've figured out how we want to die, or how we, some other people, they will say, okay, some questions that people get asked when they're interviewed, famous people, they'll be like, okay, how would you like to be remembered after you've passed away? Or another common question sometimes people get interviewed, they'll be asked is, what would you like to be said about you at your eulogy, at your funeral, at your wake? So people start to think a little bit. And it's actually not a morbid way of thinking. There are two ways to approach it. One way is to think, oh, I don't want to talk about death. I have phobia, it's superstitious. I don't want to talk about death. I don't want to even think about it. But if we think from a different perspective, from a harmonious perspective way of thinking, which is, it's impersonal. impersonal nature of all things, then we start to think about, well, how am I going to lead my life so that when I die, I know that I've led a good life? Now, very interestingly, different people have different ideas about that. Some people will say, well, I'll make just enough money so that I can retire in a nice little home and travel around the world. There's nothing wrong with that, okay? There's nothing wrong with that. So different people have different ideas. But I think one thing we should if we're going to try and practice the teachings of the Buddha, then we should really contemplate and ask ourselves, well, given this time that I have, what can I do with this time that's given to me, with this body that's given to me? So that when I die, then at least I know I've done the best that I can for myself, for my family, for the people around me, for society, etc., etc. And when we think in that way, interestingly, things start to change. So then we start to see every single decision we make in life, whether it's related to family, whether it's related to ourselves, to family, to our workplace colleagues, bosses, friends who we choose and to acquaint with or to surround ourselves with, and who we avoid. That's what I'm trying to learn now as well. There are some people we should avoid. We start to see, and now I start to realize there's a teaching somewhere in the suttas. I can't remember where exactly, but the Buddha reminded us to contemplate on death more often than not. And I couldn't understand that for a long time. I thought it was the meditation on death. And then I thought to myself, well, what if we don't have to go to that level of detail? What if we just think about in terms of how we want to die? So we keep it very high level and just think in terms of, well, how would I like to how would I like to live my life so that when I die, I have this sense of, okay, I've done my best, right? When we think like that, we'll start to see every single, daily decisions we make will be different. It will change. It will start to change. And recently I was listening to this podcast by entrepreneurs. I used to think entrepreneurs were bad people or were greedy people, See, I was caught up with all these weird ideas, okay? So this favorite, they are entrepreneurial coaches, actually. They coach other entrepreneurs. And there's this idea that they are trying to, I thought it was a funny idea. I'm not suggesting that we pursue that idea, but they call it a life extender framework, where we start to think. I thought it was interesting, so I thought I'd share. So he interviews the entrepreneurs he coaches, and said, okay, at what age do you think you're going to die? And then different people, some people will say, oh, maybe 85, and then he'll ask that person, okay, so you think you'll die at 85, yeah? So suppose you're at 84. What do you think your health will be like at 84? What do you think your financial status will be at 84? And then that person will say, I think I'll still be good. So these are entrepreneurs that maybe are in their 60s or something. So I said, oh, I take care of my health, I exercise, I eat well, I listen to my doctor, I maintain good health, blah, blah. So at 84, I think I should still be, okay, and financially I should be fine. So then he asked, okay, so if you think you will be fairly okay at 84, do you think there's a chance that you would die in 1 year, 85? Then the person will think, now that you mention it, maybe not. Maybe I'll live longer. And then he asks, how much longer? 10 years longer? 15 years longer? And the guy will say, maybe 10, maybe 15. And then he probes because he's a coach. He goes, which one? 10 years more or 15 years more? There is a difference. And then the answer will come something like, okay, 15, I think. 15 years longer than what I initially thought. And the exercise is really not about ensuring that the person dies at 100 years old. The exercise is about changing the mindset. Because more often than not, what he noticed during his coaching is that when people just change the way they think, all their decisions in life change. How they want to lead their life, how they want to treat other people. Everything changes. So then I start to think about coming back to the Buddha, where the Buddha asks us to contemplate on death often. Then I thought, maybe this is what the Buddha was trying to tell us. Not necessary to go deep into the meditation on death, which is a useful technique, but we don't need to do that. With the twin practice, it's more efficient and effective to meditate on loving kindness. Unless we need to use that, then that's a different story if the instructions come that way. So then I thought, maybe you don't have to go into that level of detail. Maybe we just need to often think about how we want to die, and that's good enough. I don't know. Anyway, an invitation to think about that. Okay. All right. Instead, with insight, let him see each presently arisen state. Let him know that and be sure of it, invincibly, unshakably. So here is instead with insight, again, just using the twin practice. Just using the twin practice to just see. We don't even have to go into detail. We don't even have to go into the level of moment to moment observe because sometimes I feel like when people fall into I have to moment. Yes, when we are deep into that meditative level, yes, then that indeed is very, very powerful, very, very useful to be able to really go deep into the teachings of the Buddha. Yes. But that is only when we are really in the deep state of meditation. What about the rest of the day in our day-to-day life? Have we really thought about that? So in our day-to-day life, how are we going to practice with insight? Think about it, right? In our day-to-day life, as we are doing our task, as we are doing our house chores, as we are engaged in a conversation with a family member, with a friend, a colleague, how do we use the twin practice to be present? Okay, so that is important as well, because if we can't do that well, then it is very difficult to get very far in the meditation practice as well. Because we only have one brain, and it's the same brain that we carry around with our day-to-day lives, and it's the same brain we use for our meditation. So how can we possibly two different lives because we don't have two different brains. Simple as that. Okay. Today the effort must be made. Tomorrow death may come. Who knows? No bargain with mortality can keep him and his hordes away. So here it's more poetic. So him and his hordes just refers to mortality, not necessarily as a person or an identity, but mortality just here means death in general. So here is more of a poetic nature. That means it's an urge thing. We practice now. We practice not necessarily sit in meditation the whole day, but we practice our loving kindness, our four Brahma Viharas. We practice every single day. But one who dwells thus ardently, relentlessly by day, by night, it is he, the peaceful sage, has said, who has had one excellent night. So here the peaceful sage is the Buddha himself. One who dwells thus ardently, relentlessly by day, by night. Again, it's not saying, again, there's some misconception here. Okay, I'm going to be like this, strict with my practice, day and night, day and night. Because guess what? I did that at one time not too long ago as well. And what happens is it will cause an imbalance. In the mind, but also in the body. It will cause imbalance in the mind and in the body as well. And the effect of that won't be immediate. But over time it will. The body will tell the tale. Let's put it that way. So the practice, when we say dwell thus ardently, relentlessly, means, the 6 R's, the smiling, the recognize when the tension arises, release that tension, relax the head, that's good enough. But if the pain is just too much sometimes, then it's a skill, I realize. It's a practice of the 6 R's itself to be able to let go of the, for lack of a better word, personification of the pain. And it depends on the level of the pain and the level of the clinging on to the pain. So as Bhante Vimalaramsi used to say, the pain or hindrances or whatever is pulling us away from meditation, it's not our enemy, it's our friend actually, because that lies the key to where our attachments are. What are we still holding on to? And the funny thing is, although we sometimes don't want to admit it, a large majority of us like to cling on to our pain. Be honest. We like to cling and hold on to what is giving us pain, whether it's mental pain, physical pain, emotional pain, doesn't matter. It's just pain. There's a whole chapter on pain, right? In the Majjhima Nikaya, where the Buddha, I can't remember which one now, but it was a chapter that went through what is suffering. Does anyone remember that one? Very detailed. Which one? Which one? Does anyone remember? Is it the... Is it the... What is suffering? Suffering. The definition. Very detailed definition of suffering. Let's see if I can find it. If I can find it. Suffering. S. No, not just samsara, but dukkha.
Majjhima Nikaya 13.
1-3, was it, Madam Nanda?
The longer discourse on the mass of suffering.
What number? Sorry.
13
13.
and 14 as well.
Let's have a quick look. Sensual pleasures. Not really. It was with the dependent on origination, sorrow, grief, lamentation, pain, and despair. It gave an explanation on each of that. Never mind. If I can find it next week, I'll let you know. But there is one sutta because I remember it being read. It's like, what is sorrow? Sorrow is da da da. What is grief? Grief is la la la. Because when we recite the dependent origination, when it gets to tanha, pachika, sorry. So craving, dependent on craving, clinging arises, depending on clinging, habitual tendency arises, dependent on habitual tendency, birth arises, dependent on birth, pain, grief, sorrow, lamentation, despair arises, leading to death. So in that particular sutta, there's full explanation of each of those. What is sorrow? What is grief? What is lamentation? I'll find it next reading. I'll see if I can. Okay. Sorry, I went one whole big circle and we still haven't got past this part. Then the Blessed One rose from his seat and entered his dwelling after reciting the Bhaddekarata Sutta. Samidhi and the other monks present at the time went to the Venerable Mahākaccāna in search of an explanation. As in the prelude to the Madhupindika Sutta, Mahākaccāna at first remonstrates. Oh, that's a new word. I guess redemonstrate with them, but then agrees. Oh, no, I don't think so. Remonstrates. Let's have a look. It's a new word for me. A lot of big words. Remonstrates. Makes a forceful, reproachful protest. So basically, he reproached them. And then he agrees to share his understanding. Taking up the first two lines as the theme of these expositions, he explicates each by the way of the sixth sense base. Even better. So he goes into really detail. So what I just went through earlier was just only at the surface, helicopter view. Now Mahākaccāna explains it with reference to the sixth sense bases. One revives the past when one recollects the I and the forms seen in the past, dwelling upon them with desire and lust. So too with the other five sense faculties and their objects. So this explanation goes to the root, which is what the Buddha's teaching does. The reason why the Buddha's teaching is so powerful is because it goes to the root of a lot of things, not just the surface level. So here Mahākaccāna is explaining the same poem, not just at the surface level, but at the root. And the root is when our I sees an object, remember, dependent on I and form, I consciousness arises. The meaning of the three is eye contact, right? When the I and the form meet, eye consciousness arises, that moment when it recollects something from the past, and we dwell upon that with desire and lust, or we dwell upon that with a sense of craving, a sense of wanting it more. And the stories come. It's very fast, really. The stories go, oh, I like it. I want to have more of it. And the same with the opposite too. So here the example is desire and lust. The same with the opposite. I catches a form, anything, really. Even an email happened to me last week, completely misconstrued. I was just saying to my friend, probably because I was in pain. So I can misconstrue an email. And I just had to flick the email to another mentor and say, look, this person said this to me. I completely mistrust this person now. And then she came back to me and said, oh, I don't think he meant it in a very demeaning way, So because at the moment I saw the email, I dwelled upon not just the words in the email, but also who said it. And on the occasion in the past and all that sort of thing. So in an instant, very quickly, bam, dwelling upon, in that instance, not desire and lust, but hatred. Yeah, very quick, just like that, spiral, So sometimes it's useful to have a Kalyana Mitta catch and go, really? I don't think that's what he meant, And so too with the other five sense faculties and their objects. So not just the eye and form, the ear and sound, the nose and odor, the tongue and taste, the body and what do they call that? Tactile objects? Is that how we say it? Is really what it is. One builds up hope upon the future when one sets one's heart on experiencing in the future sense objects one has not yet encountered. Similar thing. One is in the past, one is in the future. One who does not bind himself by desire and lust to memories of past sensory experience and yearnings for future sensory experience is one who does not revive the past or build up hope upon the future. So this exposition by Mahākaccāna is really the root explanation of this poem, Madhikkarata's first verse. Okay, even what I mentioned earlier is only at the surface. But I guess still useful in case this part not make sense to some people, Sometimes we need to go at a, let's say, helicopter level before we can go deeper. Depends, everybody's at a different level, right? But yeah, this explanation would be really the root source of it. Similarly, one whose mind is shackled by lust to the present sense faculties and their objects is called one vanquished in regard to presently arisen states, while one whose mind is not bound to them by lust is called one invincible in regard to presently arisen states. Again, the monks return to the Buddha, who says, if you had asked me the meaning of this, I would have explained it to you in the same way that Mahākaccāna has done. Okay, the Udesa Vibhanga is another sutta, but it's a fairly long one, and because we took quite some time today, I think I went on a whole roundabout. Probably shouldn't have, sorry. let's leave the Udesa Vibhanga and the Samyutta. We see how much we can cover the next round. Samyutta one is also fairly long. And then we'll go to the Anguttara Nikaya. How does that sound? Sorry, I do realize I deviated a little bit. I didn't
No
expect to do
problem. That's fine. We can continue next time.
Yeah, let's continue the Udesa Vibhanga, because the Udesa Vibhanga is a fairly important sutta as well in the Majjhima Nikaya. And these suttas have been read before by either I'm pretty sure Bhante Vimaramsi would have read them at least once. Venerable Sister Kema as well. And it would have been read a number of times by some of the twin guides as well. These are popular suttas. Okay. So does anyone have any thoughts to share?
That's very interesting. Thank you very much indeed, May. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you, Madam Nanda. I'm glad you are enjoying it. I do realize these 2 weeks that my smiling has been going down. So I'm trying to remind myself daily, come on, let's get back to smiling. Doesn't matter if I don't feel like smiling, just smile. I don't know if it's the physical condition, but that it doesn't matter really, the 6 hours. It shouldn't matter whether we're in mental pain or physical pain or emotional pain. That's what it's meant to be. It's an antidote. Yes, so I will try to remind myself to smile more, smile. Okay, anyway, we shall, if there are no further sharings, then we share the merits together. Oops, hang on. Where is it? Yes. Okay. So let us share the merits together. Okay. May suffering ones be suffering free and the fear-struck fearless be. May the grieving shed all grief and may all beings find relief. May all beings share these merits that we have thus acquired for the acquisition of all kinds of happiness. May beings inhabiting space and earth, devas and nadas of mighty power share these merits of ours. May they long protect the Buddha's dispensation. Sadhu. Okie dokes, thank you so much. Not sure yet next Sunday which agenda. I think there's people are really busy. The twin retreats, mostly in India, there's a lot going on. I think Bhante is also very busy with a lot of requests. We'll see. We'll see. Okay. We'll see if we can get someone. All right. But if not, if anyone has specific requests, please just send me a WhatsApp, and then we'll see if we can accommodate. Okay.
Thank you very much, May. Hope you'll get better soon. Sending
Thank
you lots of metta.
Thank you so much. Yes, I am also sending a lot of metta to my nerves, my nervous system, my nerves. That sounds so funny, sending metta to my nerves. And also forgiving myself for I know we just talked a whole lot about not thinking too much about the past, but what I'm experiencing now, part of it is not taking care of myself well enough in the past. So I'm doing, forgiving myself for not taking care of myself in the past as well. And sending metta to my nervous system, or the nerve, the sciatic nerve in this case. It's amazing. I can't believe our spinal cord and how it works, and the nerve and how it works. It's just like one tiny area, and it can totally affect different parts of the leg. It can totally affect mobility and walking. It's not a huge part of the body. It's just small local area of the body, but it can send signals to a whole section of the body, so much so that it totally, the whole mobility, the whole everything. It's amazing. The human body is just, gosh, I think it beats any system that exists in the world today. The human body, it's so complex, yet so, gosh. Anyway, take care of yourself, everyone. Make sure you have good health always. No kidding. Okay. And do what you can. Okay. All right. Take care,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Take
Bye.
care of yourself. Look after yourself.
Yep. I'm on the road to recovery. Thank you so much.
Great. See you next week.
See you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.